Please like and subscribe to the channel if you find this video interesting. Enjoy watching the video. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee usually filled Sarah's 8-year marriage with a sense of comforting routine, but lately, it just smelled like bitterness. 8 years with Mark, 8 years building their life in the heart of suburban America, 8 years raising their bright-eyed daughter, Lily. Their sprawling 2-story house, complete with a picket fence and a meticulously manicured lawn, was supposed to be the epitome of the American dream. For a long time, it was. Mark, her college sweetheart, had always been her rock, her confidant, her everything. But rocks, she was discovering, could sometimes crumble. The changes had been subtle at first, like a slow, insidious current eroding the shoreline. Missed date nights turned into forgotten anniversaries. Working late became a mantra, repeated with increasing frequency. His eyes, once full of adoration, now held a distant, almost guarded look. The easy laughter they once shared had been replaced by strained silences, punctuated by the clinking of cutlery or Lily's innocent chatter. Sarah, a marketing executive whose career had always taken a back seat to her family's needs, felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. Her instincts, honed by years of navigating corporate politics and deciphering consumer behavior, screamed that something was terribly wrong. She tried talking to him, of course. "Mark, is everything okay? You seem distant," she'd ventured one evening, watching him absently scroll through his phone. He'd merely grunted, not bothering to look up. "Just stressed with work, honey. Big project coming up." The dismissive tone, the hurried explanation, it was a performance she was no longer willing to believe. The breaking point arrived on Lily's 7th birthday. Sarah had spent weeks planning a unicorn-themed party, complete with a custom cake and a bouncy castle. Mark, who usually reveled in being the doting father, was late. 2 hours late. He arrived disheveled, offering a flimsy excuse about a last-minute client emergency. Sarah saw the flicker of disappointment in Lily's eyes, and a steel resolve solidified within her. She couldn't ignore it anymore. She wouldn't. That night, after Lily was asleep, curled up with her new unicorn plushie, Sarah sat in their dimly lit living room, the silence heavy around her. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over the search bar. She typed in "Private Investigator Chicago." A wave of nausea washed over her. This wasn't her. She was Sarah, the woman who believed in open communication, in trust, in working through problems. But this felt different. This felt like a betrayal that couldn't be talked away. The investigator, a gruff but efficient man named Frank Miller, met her in a discreet downtown cafe a few days later. His office, he explained, was too conspicuous. Sarah felt a pang of morbid humor at the thought. Conspicuous was exactly what she was trying to avoid. She laid out her suspicions, her voice barely a whisper. Frank listened impassively, jotting down notes in a small pad. He quoted her a surprisingly reasonable fee, given the emotional toll this was taking. "I'll need a few days, Mrs. Hayes," he said, his eyes direct and unblinking. "I'll be in touch." The next week was an agonizing blur of anticipation and dread. Every phone call made her heart leap, every notification sent shivers down her spine. She tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Lily, but her mind was a whirlwind of anxieties. Had she made a mistake? Was she destroying her own marriage by seeking out this truth? What if she found nothing? Or worse, what if she found everything? Then came the email. The subject line was chillingly simple: "Hayes case update." Sarah's hands trembled as she clicked it open. There were photographs. The first few were of Mark, going about his day, leaving the office, grabbing coffee. Normal. Then came the others. Photos of Mark laughing, intimately close with another woman. They were at a restaurant, then strolling through a park, his arm casually around her waist. In one particularly damning shot, they were holding hands, gazing into each other's eyes with an undeniable tenderness that Sarah hadn't seen directed at her in months. The woman was beautiful, in a sleek, modern way. Dark, flowing hair, piercing blue eyes, and a figure that seemed to effortlessly command attention. She looked younger than Sarah, perhaps in her late 20s or early 30s. Sarah felt a surge of irrational anger, followed by a deeper, more profound ache. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was the intimacy, the shared laughter, the quiet understanding etched on their faces. It was everything Sarah felt had been stolen from her. Frank's accompanying report was concise, factual, and brutal. The woman's name was Jessica Thorne. She worked as a graphic designer at a rival firm, and apparently, they had met at an industry conference a few months ago. The report detailed their frequent lunch dates, their clandestine evening meetings, the late-night texts. It was all there, laid bare in cold, hard print. Sarah reread the report, her vision blurring with tears. 8 years. A daughter. A life built brick by brick, crumbling before her eyes. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, it was a potent cocktail of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. But beneath it all, a fierce protectiveness for Lily began to stir. Her daughter deserved a stable, loving home. She deserved her parents. She knew she couldn't confront Mark directly, not yet. Not without a plan. She needed to understand Jessica. Who was this woman who had so easily infiltrated her life, her marriage? Sarah felt a desperate need to see her, to understand the dynamics, to unravel the truth beyond the grainy photographs. Armed with Jessica's address from Frank's report, Sarah found herself driving through an unfamiliar part of the city a few days later. It was a trendier neighborhood, full of renovated lofts and boutique stores. Jessica's apartment building was a sleek, glass-fronted structure, a stark contrast to Sarah's traditional suburban home. She parked her SUV a safe distance away, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt like a spy in her own life, an unwilling participant in a drama she hadn't asked for. Hours passed. Sarah watched, her jaw tight, as people came and went. She saw young professionals, artists, couples. But no Jessica. Just as she was about to give up, a taxi pulled up to the curb. And there she was. Jessica Thorne. She stepped out, a vision in a stylish, form-fitting dress, her dark hair catching the afternoon sun. She exuded confidence, an effortless charm that made Sarah feel dowdy and insignificant in her sensible jeans and sweater. Jessica laughed at something the taxi driver said, a bright, carefree sound that grated on Sarah's raw nerves. Sarah watched her walk towards the building, a sickening mixture of envy and resentment churning inside her. Jessica looked happy, unburdened. Did she know she was destroying a family? Did she care? A sudden, reckless impulse seized Sarah. She needed to know. She needed to understand. She put the car in drive, slowly pulling away from the curb, intending to follow the taxi, to see where Jessica was going. Maybe she'd see Mark. Maybe she'd finally get the answers she so desperately craved. She kept a discreet distance, her eyes glued to the taxi. It weaved through traffic, heading towards the bustling downtown core. Sarah's grip on the steering wheel tightened. She felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate hope that this might be the moment she finally pieced together the fragments of her shattered reality. The taxi stopped in front of a chic art gallery. Jessica stepped out, adjusting her purse, a confident smile playing on her lips. Sarah watched her go inside, a knot tightening in her stomach. What was she doing there? Was Mark meeting her there? Sarah found a parking spot a block away and got out of her car. She walked towards the gallery, her mind racing. She felt a strange mix of fear and determination. She was about to step into the lion's den, to confront the woman who had stolen her husband's affection. As she reached the entrance, she saw Jessica inside, chatting animatedly with another man, an older, distinguished-looking gentleman. Not Mark. Sarah felt a flicker of confusion, then a wave of relief. At least Mark wasn't there, not yet. She lingered outside, trying to gather her thoughts, to decide her next move. Should she go in? What would she say? "Excuse me, are you sleeping with my husband?" The thought was ludicrous, yet the words burned on her tongue. Just then, Jessica emerged from the gallery, a small, knowing smile on her face. She looked directly at Sarah, her blue eyes sharp and intelligent. Sarah froze, caught completely off guard. Had Jessica seen her watching? Jessica started walking, her pace brisk, turning down a side street. Sarah, driven by an inexplicable urge, followed. She kept her distance, ducking behind parked cars and storefronts, feeling utterly ridiculous, yet unable to stop. The street was narrower, less crowded, lined with quaint, independent shops. Jessica turned a corner, disappearing from view. Sarah quickened her pace, her heart pounding. She rounded the corner and saw Jessica just ahead, waiting at a crosswalk. Sarah was about to slow down, to pretend she was merely a passerby, when a sudden, jarring sound ripped through the air. A blaring horn, the screech of tires. A delivery truck, speeding around the bend, veered wildly, its driver seemingly losing control. In a terrifying split second, Sarah saw the truck hurtling towards Jessica, who was now caught in the middle of the crosswalk. Without thinking, pure instinct taking over, Sarah lunged forward, a guttural scream tearing from her throat. She pushed Jessica with all her might, throwing her out of the truck's direct path. The impact was immediate, brutal. A sickening crunch. Darkness. When Sarah opened her eyes, she was lying on the cold asphalt. Her head throbbed, a dull ache reverberating through her skull. She pushed herself up, her limbs feeling strangely disconnected. "Oh my God, are you okay?" a voice cried out. It sounded oddly, unfamiliar. And yet, she knew it. It was her own voice, but it wasn't coming from her mouth. She looked down at her hands. They were slender, manicured, adorned with delicate silver rings she didn't recognize. She looked at her arms, her legs. They were long, toned, encased in a stylish, form-fitting dress. The dress Jessica had been wearing. Panic seized her. She scrambled to her feet, stumbling slightly. She looked around frantically, her gaze landing on a figure lying just a few feet away, surrounded by a growing crowd of onlookers. It was her. Sarah. Or rather, her body. Her familiar jeans and sweater, her slightly disheveled hair, her everyday handbag lying scattered beside her. And looking up at her with wide, terrified eyes, was Jessica Thorne. But those eyes were filled with Sarah's own fear, Sarah's own disbelief. They stared at each other, two souls trapped in the wrong bodies, the chaotic sounds of the accident fading into a surreal, terrifying silence. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted for an ambulance. The world tilted. Sarah felt a wave of dizziness, and then everything went black once again. She was Jessica. And Jessica was her. Their lives, irrevocably intertwined, had just taken a turn neither could have ever imagined. This was only the beginning. The world returned to Sarah in a haze of antiseptic and hushed voices. The first sensation was a dull, persistent throb in her head, followed by the unsettling realization that her body felt wrong. It was lighter, taller, and strangely alien. She tried to move her arm, and a perfectly manicured hand, adorned with delicate silver rings she still didn't recognize, responded. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the lingering fog of unconsciousness. She forced her eyes open, blinking against the sterile white light of a hospital room. A nurse, a kindly-looking woman with tired eyes, was adjusting an IV drip beside the bed. "Ah, you're awake, dear," the nurse murmured, her voice soft. "How are you feeling? Any pain?" Sarah tried to speak, but her throat felt scratchy. Where am I?" The voice that emerged was higher-pitched, smoother, undeniably Jessica's. The sound sent a fresh jolt of horror through her. The nurse smiled gently. "You're at St. Jude's Hospital. You were in an accident, a pedestrian vehicle collision. You're very lucky, all things considered. Just a minor concussion and some bruising. Your friend is in the room next door, also stable." Friend? Sarah's mind raced. Jessica was her friend? And she was stable? Meaning her body was okay. A strange mix of relief and terror washed over her. Can I see her?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling, still struggling with the unfamiliar timbre. "The doctors want to run a few more tests on both of you, but perhaps later," the nurse replied. "For now, try to rest. We'll bring you some pain medication." As the nurse left, Sarah was alone with her terrifying new reality. She looked down at her hands again, flexing the slender fingers. This wasn't her skin. This wasn't her life. She was Jessica Thorne, The woman who had captivated her husband, the woman whose existence had torn her world apart. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. She stumbled out of bed, her new legs feeling surprisingly steady. She caught her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. Dark, flowing hair framed a face that was undeniably beautiful, with striking blue eyes and full lips. It was Jessica's face, looking back at her with Sarah's terrified expression. She touched her cheek, the skin smooth and unfamiliar. This was a nightmare. A bizarre, twisted nightmare. How could this have happened? A body swap? It sounded like something out of a bad comedy movie, not her meticulously planned, suburban life. Yet, here she was. And the implications were staggering. Lily. Mark. Her entire existence. How was she going to get back? Could she get back? A knock on the door startled her. It was a police officer, a serious-looking man named Detective Miller. Miss Thorne? Do you have a moment? I'd like to ask you a few questions about the accident. Sarah's heart hammered. She had to play along. She had to be Jessica. Of course, detective, she said, trying to infuse her voice with a casual confidence she didn't feel. He asked about the truck, about what she remembered. Sarah recounted the events as truthfully as she could, omitting, of course, the part about her following Jessica. She focused on the truck veering, the sudden lunge, the impact. The detective nodded, taking notes. And the other woman, Mrs. Hayes, he said, do you know her well? Sarah swallowed. This was it. The moment of truth. We've met a few times, she hedged, trying to sound vague. Through a mutual acquaintance. She prayed he wouldn't press for details. The detective's eyes narrowed slightly, as if sensing her discomfort. She seems to have saved your life, Miss Thorne. A very brave act. Saved her life while trying to protect her own family, Sarah thought bitterly. Yes, she managed, her voice barely a whisper. She did. After the detective left, a new wave of realization washed over her. Jessica was still in the hospital, in Sarah's body. What if she woke up? What would she do? What would she say? This was a game of high stakes, a dangerous masquerade, and Sarah was completely unprepared. A few hours later, a doctor came in to check on her. Dr. Chin, a kind-faced woman with an efficient demeanor. You're making excellent progress, Miss Thorne, she said, reviewing her charts. We'll keep you overnight for observation, but you should be discharged tomorrow. Your friend, Mrs. Hayes, will likely be discharged at the same time. Can I see her now? Sarah asked, her desperation seeping into her voice. Dr. Chin hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Briefly. Just don't overexert yourselves. You've both had quite a shock. Sarah's heart pounded as she was wheeled down the hall to the next room. Every step, every turn, was filled with a terrifying anticipation. She was about to come face to face with herself. The sight of her own body, lying in the hospital bed, was profoundly disturbing. Her familiar features, usually etched with the weariness of motherhood and career, now held an expression of profound confusion and fear. Jessica's eyes, in Sarah's face, darted around the room, finally locking onto Jessica. Sarah? Jessica whispered, her voice a strained, unfamiliar version of Sarah's own. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. The moment of confrontation. Jessica, she replied, her voice still Jessica's, but imbued with Sarah's own intensity. What happened? Jessica as Sarah sat up, wincing slightly. I don't know. 1 minute I was waiting at the crosswalk, and then, you pushed me, and then, this. She gestured wildly at her own body, which was now Sarah's. I'm in your body, Sarah. What in God's name is going on? I don't know either. Sarah as Jessica retorted, her frustration boiling over. I pushed you out of the way of that truck and then, this. We swapped. It sounds insane, but it's true. They stared at each other, two women, two bodies, two souls utterly disoriented. So, you're me? Jessica asked, a flicker of something unreadable in Sarah's eyes. And you're me, Sarah confirmed, a wry, humorless smile touching Jessica's lips. We need to figure this out. Fast. The nurse came back in, looking concerned. Everything all right in here, ladies? You both seem a bit agitated. They both quickly composed themselves. Just a bit shaken up from the accident, nurse, Jessica, as Sarah said, managing to sound surprisingly calm, even in Sarah's voice. Sarah, as Jessica, felt a pang of resentment. Jessica was already adapting, already playing the part. We need to talk, Sarah, as Jessica whispered to Jessica, as Sarah, as the nurse left. Alone. The next few minutes were a flurry of whispered exchanges, a desperate attempt to piece together their bizarre predicament. They went over the accident again and again, searching for a logical explanation, but finding none. It was simply a freak event. A cosmic joke. So, what do we do? Jessica, as Sarah finally asked, her voice cracking with fear. How do we switch back? I have no idea, Sarah, as Jessica admitted, running a hand through Jessica's dark hair. But we can't tell anyone. No one would ever believe us. They'd think we're crazy. So, we just pretend? Jessica, as Sarah looked horrified. Pretend to be each other? For how long? Until we figure this out, Sarah, as Jessica said firmly. A cold resolve settled over her. This was her chance. A twisted, terrifying chance to protect her family from the inside. She was in Jessica's body. She had access to Jessica's life. And Jessica, in Sarah's body, had access to her life. This was dangerous, unpredictable, but also an opportunity. Jessica, Sarah, as Jessica said, her voice dropping to a low, intense tone. You know about Mark. Jessica, as Sarah flinched, her gaze dropping. Yes, she whispered, her voice laced with guilt. I know. You're in my body now, Sarah, as Jessica continued, her eyes fixed on her own face. You have my life, my daughter, my home. You need to understand something. I will protect my family. At all costs. Jessica, as Sarah looked up, her eyes wide. What are you saying? I'm saying, Sarah, as Jessica enunciated slowly, that until we figure this out, you will be me. You will go home to my daughter, Lily. You will go to work. You will live my life. And you will not, under any circumstances, reveal the truth to anyone. Especially Mark. Jessica, as Sarah paled. But, how? I don't know anything about your life. And Mark will know. Mark will not know, Sarah, as Jessica countered, a grim determination setting in. He's been so distant, so wrapped up in his own world, he might not even notice the subtle changes. And as for your knowledge, you'll learn. You'll observe. You'll mimic. You have to. She paused, her voice hardening. And if you try anything at all, to hurt my family, to reveal the truth in a way that damages Lily, I swear I will make your life a living hell. Jessica, as Sarah stared at her, a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension in her eyes. And what about you? She finally asked. What are you going to do? Sarah, as Jessica said, a dangerous glint entering Jessica's blue eyes, am going to be Jessica Thorne. I'm going to find out everything I can. I'm going to figure out how to switch us back. And in the meantime, I'm going to make sure that Mark understands exactly what he's been doing. The weight of her words hung heavy in the sterile hospital room. The game had begun. Sarah, trapped in the body of her husband's mistress, was about to embark on the most audacious and terrifying mission of her life, to save her marriage, her family, and her very identity. And Jessica, in Sarah's body, was about to step into a life she had inadvertently tried to destroy, now forced to protect it from the outside, while also navigating the treacherous path of impersonation. The stage was set for a dramatic, hilarious, and ultimately heartbreaking struggle for identity and love. The morning of their discharge was a surreal ballet of forced normalcy. Sarah, in Jessica's body, and Jessica, in Sarah's body, sat across from each other in the hospital cafeteria, sipping lukewarm coffee. They had spent the night in separate rooms, each grappling with the enormity of their predicament. Their whispered conversation from the previous night had established the ground rules, absolute secrecy, and a pact to try and find a way back, however improbable. Okay, Sarah, as Jessica said, stirring her coffee with a slender finger that felt alien to her. Let's go over this. You're going home to my house. Lily will be there. She's 7, bright, loves unicorns and anything pink. Her school is Northwood Elementary. Her teacher is Mrs. Henderson. She has soccer practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. Her best friend is Chloe. She recited the details like a frantic data download, watching her own familiar face for any sign of comprehension. Jessica as Sarah looked overwhelmed. Soccer practice, Mrs. Henderson, Chloe. I can't remember all this. And what about your work? Your friends? What if someone calls? You'll figure it out, Sarah as Jessica said, trying to project a confidence she didn't fully possess. You're a quick study, I've seen your work. You'll observe. You'll listen. You'll mimic. As for work, tell them you need a few days off, a delayed recovery from the accident. They'll understand. She paused, her eyes narrowing. And Mark. Remember, he's been distant. Use that to your advantage. He might not notice anything out of the ordinary if you play it right. Just be less demanding, more detached, like he's been. Jessica's Sarah a nod on her lip. And what about you? What am I supposed to tell Mark about? Jessica. Sarah as Jessica had thought about this. Tell him Jessica is fine, she's recovering. You're grateful for her quick thinking. Be vague. Don't mention anything about an ongoing friendship. Keep your distance from Jessica for a while, for appearance's sake. A mischievous glint flickered in Sarah's eyes, now inhabiting Jessica's face. And what about you in my life? What am I supposed to do with your graphic design job? And your personal life? Sarah as Jessica grimaced. My personal life is currently a train wreck, thanks to you and Mark, so you don't have to worry too much about that. As for work, your firm, Thorne and Associates, is in the downtown loop. I saw the address on your driver's license. I'll figure it out. I'm good at faking it until I make it. And I'm a quick learner. And I'm going to find out everything, she added silently. Their discharge forms were signed, and they were handed their respective belongings. Sarah as Jessica felt a strange pang of loss as she saw her familiar handbag in Jessica's hands, containing her wallet, her phone, her entire identity. Now she was holding Jessica's sleek, designer purse, filled with someone else's life. As they walked out of the hospital, a sleek black sedan pulled up. Mark. Sarah as Jessica's heart clenched. He looked tired, worried. His eyes immediately went to Sarah, his wife, standing there. He rushed towards her, enveloping her in a hug. Sarah, my God, are you okay? I was so worried. Mark's voice was genuinely concerned, tinged with guilt. Jessica's Sarah stiffened in his embrace, her eyes darting nervously to Sarah's Jessica. I'm fine, Mark, she said, her voice a little shaky, but distinctly Sarah's. Just a bit sore. Anne. Jessica, she nodded towards Sarah's Jessica. She's okay too. Mark glanced at Sarah's Jessica, a fleeting, almost imperceptible flicker in his eyes. Sarah's Jessica met his gaze, a carefully neutral expression on her new face. No recognition, no hint of their secret trysts. Good. He was still in the dark. Miss Thorne, thank you. Thank you for being there, Mark said, his voice a little strained. He looked uncomfortable, avoiding Sarah's Jessica's eyes. Of course, Sarah's Jessica replied, trying to imbue Jessica's voice with a polite formality. I'm just glad everyone is okay. Mark helped Jessica's Sarah into the passenger seat of his car. As he got in, he glanced back at Sarah's Jessica. Are you going to be all right, Miss Thorne? Do you need a ride? Sarah's Jessica shook her head. No, thank you, Mr. Hayes. I've already called a cab. I'll be fine. She watched as Mark pulled away, her familiar SUV carrying her own body, her own husband, and the woman who had caused her so much pain, out of sight. A profound sense of loneliness washed over her, quickly replaced by a steely determination. Her own cab arrived a few minutes later. Thorne and Associates, she instructed the driver, giving the address she'd memorized. The ride downtown was a whirlwind of planning. She needed to learn everything about Jessica's life, and quickly. Her passwords, her schedule, her clients, her friends. This wasn't just about survival, it was about investigation. She was a detective in her own life, now with the ultimate undercover assignment. Arriving at Thorne and Associates, Sarah's Jessica took a deep breath. The office was sleek, modern, and bustling. A reception area with minimalist furniture, vibrant artwork on the walls. It screamed Jessica Thorne. Good morning, Jessica. A cheerful woman with bright red hair greeted her. "We were so worried about you. Are you all right?" "Yes, Amy, I'm fine, thank you," Sarah's Jessica replied, forcing a smile that felt unnatural on Jessica's face. "Just a bit of a shock, you know. But I'm ready to dive back in." Amy, Jessica's assistant, looked relieved. "Oh, good. Your 10 a.m. with the Peterson account is still on. And Mr. Henderson from Sterling wants to confirm your lunch tomorrow." "Oh, and your mother called, asking about the accident." Sarah's Jessica felt a cold dread. Jessica had a mother? Of course she did. Another layer of impersonation to navigate. Right, the Peterson account. And reschedule Mr. Henderson for Thursday? And tell my mother I'll call her back later. I need to focus on work first. She needed time to breathe, to understand. Amy nodded, scribbling notes. Got it. Your office is just down the hall. Jessica's office was even more her than the lobby. A pristine white desk, a huge monitor displaying intricate graphic designs, shelves filled with art books and awards. Sarah's Jessica sat in the ergonomic chair, feeling utterly out of place. She powered on the computer, her heart pounding. She needed to find Jessica's digital life, her files, her calendar. She fumbled with the keyboard, her fingers feeling clumsy on the unfamiliar keys. She tried a few common passwords, her birthday, password 123. Nothing. Then a wild guess, born of a sudden, desperate intuition, Mark's birthday. The screen flickered, and the desktop appeared. Sarah's Jessica felt a triumphant surge. Of course! How utterly predictable. The confirmation of their affair, staring her in the face. She dove into Jessica's digital world. Her calendar was meticulously organized, filled with client meetings, design deadlines, and, surprisingly, a few yoga classes. She found a folder labeled Personal. Her heart raced as she clicked it open. Inside, there were photos. Photos of Jessica with friends, at parties, on vacations. And then a subfolder, M. Sarah's Jessica's breath hitched. She clicked. There they were. Photos of Mark and Jessica. Not just the professional ones from Frank's report, but intimate selfies, stolen moments, casual affection. A picture of Mark kissing Jessica's forehead, another of them laughing over drinks. It was a punch to the gut, a visual confirmation of the depth of their betrayal. It solidified her resolve. This wasn't just about saving her marriage, it was about self-preservation. Meanwhile, back in her own suburban home, Jessica's Sarah was facing her own set of challenges. Mark had been attentive, perhaps overly so, a clear sign of his guilt. He had made her a light breakfast, brought her tea in bed, fussed over her bruising. "Are you sure you're feeling okay, honey?" Mark asked, watching her carefully as she buttered a piece of toast, her movements still a little awkward in Sarah's body. "You seem a little different." Jessica's Sarah forced a smile, a slight tremor in Sarah's lips. "Just shaken up, Mark. You know, near-death experience and all. It takes a toll." She tried to sound convincing, to mimic Sarah's usual tone, but it felt forced. Lily, oblivious to the drama unfolding, bounded into the kitchen. "Mommy, you're home. Are you really okay?" She hugged Sarah fiercely. Jessica's Sarah hugged her back, feeling a strange mixture of warmth and unease. This was Sarah's daughter, Sarah's life. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired. Mommy needs to rest. But you promised to help me with my unicorn drawing." Lily pouted. Jessica's Sarah's mind went blank. Unicorn drawing? She knew nothing about unicorn drawings. "Oh, right. Maybe later, sweetie." Mommy's head still hurts a bit. Lily looked disappointed, and Jessica's Sarah felt a pang of guilt. This was harder than she thought. She had to be Sarah, the loving mother, the attentive wife. But every interaction was a minefield of potential discovery. Later that afternoon, while Mark was at work, Jessica's Sarah tried to navigate Sarah's life. She found Sarah's phone, a treasure trove of information. She scrolled through texts, calls, emails. She found schedules, grocery lists, reminders. It was overwhelming. A text message popped up. "Hey Sarah, don't forget book club tonight. We're discussing The Silent Patient. See you at 7. Book club? Jessica Thorne did not do book club. She felt a wave of panic. How was she going to pull this off? She had to learn fast. She went to Sarah's closet, a veritable sea of practical, comfortable clothing. So different from her own sleek, designer wardrobe. She picked out a sensible blouse and jeans, feeling like she was dressing up in a costume. As she looked in the mirror, she saw Sarah's reflection, but it wasn't Sarah looking back. It was Jessica, trapped, confused, and suddenly faced with the domestic realities of the woman she had betrayed. The guilt, sharp and unwelcome, pricked at her. This wasn't just a body, it was a life, a family, a legacy. The phone rang. It was Mark. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. Hello. Hey honey, just checking in. How's my favorite patient doing? Mark's voice was warm, a stark contrast to his usual guarded tone. Sarah forced a laugh, trying to emulate Sarah's genuine warmth. I'm okay, Mark. Just taking it easy. Lily's drawing unicorns. She glanced at Lily, who was indeed happily coloring at the kitchen table. That's good, Mark said. Listen, I'm going to be home a little late tonight. Big meeting. Don't wait up. Sarah felt a familiar pang of frustration, even in Sarah's body. Right. Big meeting. The words came out sharper than she intended. Everything okay? Mark asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Just tired, Sarah quickly corrected, softening her tone. See you when you get home. She hung up, a profound weariness settling over her. This was going to be an ordeal. Living Sarah's life, playing the dutiful wife, the loving mother, all while knowing Mark was probably meeting Jessica. The irony was almost unbearable. Meanwhile, Jessica was deep in the rabbit hole of Jessica's laptop. She found incriminating emails, secret travel plans, even a shared bank account for future adventures. It was all there, the meticulously documented evidence of Mark's double life. But then, she found something else. A folder labeled Mark's gift. She opened it, her heart thumping. It was a series of meticulously crafted graphic designs, a portfolio presentation for a new marketing campaign. It was brilliant, creative, undeniably talented work. And it was clearly meant to help Mark's career. A pang of confusion. Was Jessica just a heartless homewrecker, or was there more to her? Was she genuinely in love with Mark, to the point of investing her talent and time into his professional success? Jessica leaned back in Jessica's chair, the weight of the day pressing down on her. The impersonation game was far more complex, far more emotionally taxing than she had ever anticipated. She was walking a tightrope, balancing on the precipice of discovery, trying to protect her past while unraveling the present, all while living in the skin of her rival. The drama, it seemed, had only just begun. Jessica found herself immersed in the high-stakes world of graphic design. Jessica Thorne was undeniably brilliant. Her designs were innovative, her client presentations captivating. Sarah, with her own marketing background, quickly adapted, relying on her sharp intellect and a healthy dose of improvisation. She spent late nights poring over Jessica's past projects, client notes, and design software tutorials. She discovered that Jessica was a workaholic, often staying late, sometimes even sleeping at the office during crunch times. This, Sarah realized with a bitter taste, explained some of Mark's late nights. They weren't always together. Sometimes, they were just both working late. One morning, Jessica was presenting a new logo concept to a demanding client. Her heart pounded as she channeled Jessica's confident, articulate persona. She managed to field complex questions, offer creative solutions, and even crack a few of Jessica's signature witty remarks. The client was impressed. "Jessica, you've really outdone yourself," he praised. Jessica felt a strange thrill of accomplishment, mixed with the unsettling feeling of stealing someone else's triumph. Her primary mission, however, remained Mark. She cautiously sifted through Jessica's phone, looking for any communication from him. Their texts were a mix of professional discussions, clandestine plans, and, surprisingly, mundane updates about their days. It wasn't the passionate, all-consuming affair she had imagined, but a slow, insidious erosion of her own marriage, built on shared secrets and quiet intimacy. One evening, Mark texted, "Thinking of you. Can't wait for dinner tomorrow." Sarah as Jessica felt a jolt. Dinner tomorrow. With Mark. She had to go. She had to observe. She had to understand. She typed back, trying to mimic Jessica's casual flirtatiousness. "Me too. Looking forward to it." The next day was a whirlwind. She managed to reschedule a meeting, feigned a slight cold to explain any subtle changes in her demeanor, and then spent an hour in front of Jessica's mirror, trying on outfits. Jessica's wardrobe was vibrant, bold, and unapologetically sexy. Sarah, who usually favored comfortable elegance, felt like she was dressing for a costume party. She settled on a sleek black dress, paired with delicate gold jewelry. She even attempted Jessica's signature winged eyeliner, a feat of makeup artistry that left her feeling like she was preparing for battle. When Mark arrived at Jessica's apartment, Sarah's Jessica's heart hammered against her ribs. He looked handsome, dressed in a sharp suit, a familiar smile on his face. He kissed her cheek, a casual intimacy that sent a shiver down her spine. It was her husband, kissing another woman's face, a face that was now hers. The surreal nature of it all was overwhelming. "You look beautiful, Jess," Mark murmured, his eyes lingering on her. "Thank you," Sarah's Jessica replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She noticed a subtle hesitation in his gaze, a fleeting moment of something unreadable. Had he noticed a difference? Over dinner at a trendy Italian restaurant, Sarah's Jessica carefully observed Mark. He was charming, attentive, making her laugh with stories about his day. He asked about her work, about her plans. He seemed genuinely interested. It was the Mark she had fallen in love with, the Mark she had married, the Mark she had slowly lost. She subtly probed, trying to understand their dynamic. "How's work been for you, Mark? Any big projects on the horizon?" she asked, mirroring a question Jessica might ask. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's been a lot. The Johnson account is proving difficult. And my boss, Greg, is really breathing down my neck." Sarah's Jessica felt a flicker of empathy. She knew about the Johnson account, and she knew Greg. She had worked alongside Mark for years, a silent partner in his professional struggles and triumphs. "I'm sure you'll handle it," she said, her voice softer than intended. "You always do." Mark looked at her, a surprised expression on his face. "You know, you're right. I will." He reached across the table, taking her hand. His touch was warm, familiar. Sarah's Jessica felt a jolt of conflicting emotions. It was his hand, holding her hand, but it wasn't her hand. It was Jessica's. Later, as they walked out of the restaurant, Mark paused. "Jess," he began, his voice lowered, "about Sarah. How's she doing after the accident?" Sarah's Jessica's breath caught. This was it. The real test. "She's doing well, I think," she said, trying to sound nonchalant. "A bit shaken, but recovering." "Why do you ask?" Mark shifted uncomfortably. "No reason, just felt bad for her. It was a nasty accident. She was really brave, pushing you out of the way like that." Sarah's Jessica felt a surge of something akin to victory. He felt guilty. Good. Let him feel it. "Yes, she agreed, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on Jessica's lips. "Very brave." Meanwhile, back in Sarah's suburban home, Jessica's Sarah was grappling with the relentless demands of domesticity. Lily was a whirlwind of energy, questions, and demands for attention. Jessica, who was used to quiet evenings spent working or socializing with friends, found herself constantly on duty. "Mommy, can you read me a story?" Lily would ask, thrusting a brightly colored picture book into her hands. Jessica's Sarah, who hadn't read a children's book in years, stumbled through the words, trying to mimic Sarah's soothing voice. "Mommy, can you make my favorite macaroni and cheese?" Lily would plead. Jessica's Sarah, a gourmet cook accustomed to artisanal ingredients and complex recipes, found herself staring blankly at a box of Kraft mac and cheese, utterly bewildered by the instructions. The biggest challenge, however, was Mark. His initial attentiveness had faded, replaced by his usual pattern of working late and being emotionally distant. Jessica's Sarah found herself falling into Sarah's routine, but with an underlying tension. She saw the familiar signs of Mark's withdrawal, and now, understanding the reason, it stung. One evening, Mark came home particularly late, his phone clutched in his hand. He looked tired, but there was a faint, almost imperceptible flush on his cheeks. He kissed Sarah on the forehead, a quick, perfunctory gesture. "Long night, honey?" Jessica, Sarah asked, her voice laced with an unfamiliar bitterness. It was Sarah's voice, but the emotion was Jessica's, tainted by her own guilt and growing frustration. Mark nodded, avoiding her eyes. "Yeah, really long. Big client meeting ran over." Jessica, Sarah knew it was a lie. She imagined him with Jessica, laughing, sharing secrets, just as she had been doing earlier in the other body. A strange wave of jealousy, born of guilt, washed over her. She was betraying Sarah by being with Mark in her body, but she was also feeling the sting of Mark's betrayal from Sarah's perspective. It was a dizzying, confusing mess of emotions. The next day, Jessica, Sarah decided to brave Sarah's book club. She had skimmed The Silent Patient, a psychological thriller, but most of the details were a blur. She arrived at her friend Emily's house, feeling like an imposter. "Sarah, so glad you could make it. How are you feeling?" Emily greeted her with a warm hug. "Much better, thank you," Jessica's Sarah replied, forcing a smile. The book club discussion was a nightmare. Sarah's friends, a lively group of women, dissected the novel with passion and insight. Jessica's Sarah mumbled a few vague comments, trying to sound engaged, but she felt completely out of her depth. She realized how deeply Sarah was connected to these women, how much of her life was woven into these friendships. During a lull in the conversation, Emily leaned over. "So, Sarah, how's Mark doing after all this? He seemed a bit off when I saw him at Lily's school pickup yesterday." Jessica's Sarah's heart skipped a beat. He's fine. Just stressed with work." She kept her tone even, but inwardly, she was panicking. "Well, he should be more supportive after what you've been through," another friend, Rachel, chimed in. "A near-death experience. You need his full attention." Jessica's Sarah felt a flush creep up Sarah's neck. The irony was suffocating. She was the reason Mark wasn't giving Sarah his full attention. She felt a profound wave of shame, followed by a fierce, unfamiliar urge to protect Sarah's reputation, Sarah's marriage, even though she was the one who had almost destroyed it. Back in Jessica's apartment, Sarah's Jessica was making a discovery. She found a hidden compartment in Jessica's desk containing a small, beautifully carved wooden box. Inside, there was a single, yellowed photograph. It was a picture of a young Jessica, probably in her teens, standing next to a stern-looking woman. And behind them a man, whose face was scratched out. Beneath the photo, a crumpled note, in Jessica's handwriting, "He always chooses work. He always leaves. Don't be like her, Jess." Sarah's Jessica stared at the note, a new piece of the puzzle falling into place. Jessica's history. A father who had left, a mother who seemed stern. A pattern of abandonment. Was Mark just another man in a long line of men who would eventually choose work over her? Was her affair with Mark less about love and more about a desperate attempt to break a generational pattern, to secure a man who would finally stay? The lines between victim and villain began to blur. Sarah's Jessica realized that Jessica was not just a one-dimensional antagonist. She was a complex woman with her own history, her own insecurities, her own pain. And this realization, strangely, made her mission even more complicated. She was no longer just protecting her family from an outside threat. She was now living that threat's life, experiencing her pain, and slowly beginning to understand her motivations. The impersonation game had opened a Pandora's box of emotions, forcing Sarah to confront not just her husband's betrayal, but the humanity of the woman who had caused it. The drama was about to get a lot more personal. As the weeks turned into a month, the impersonation game became a fragile dance, each woman trying to maintain their assumed identities while grappling with the increasingly complex realities of their swapped lives. The initial shock had given way to a strange, almost unsettling rhythm. Sarah's Jessica found herself thriving in Jessica's high-pressure design world. Her inherent intelligence and adaptability allowed her to not only keep up with Jessica's demanding schedule, but to excel. She even found herself enjoying the creative challenge, a spark she hadn't realized was missing from her own life. She redesigned a major client's website, earning rave reviews and a hefty bonus for Jessica. But the professional success was a thin veil over her personal turmoil. Her undercover mission to understand Mark and Jessica's affair was yielding more questions than answers. She continued to have clandestine dinners with Mark, playing the role of the alluring mistress. During these encounters, she noticed that Mark, while still charmed by Jessica, seemed different. He was more introspective, sometimes staring off into the distance, a thoughtful, almost melancholic expression on his face. One evening, after a particularly quiet dinner, Mark confessed, "Jess, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About everything." Sarah's Jessica's heart pounded. This was it. Was he going to break it off with her? Or confess his guilt? "Oh," she prompted, trying to sound casual, feigning a slight disinterest that would encourage him to speak freely. "Yeah," Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The accident. It really shook me up. Seeing Sarah almost die, it made me realize a lot of things. About what's truly important." He looked at her, his eyes serious. I'm not sure this is what I want anymore." Sarah's Jessica felt a strange mixture of relief and a sharp pang of something she couldn't quite place, perhaps a touch of sympathy for Jessica, knowing what this news would do to her. But then, the primary instinct of protecting her family kicked in. "What exactly are you saying, Mark?" she asked, her voice deliberately flat, trying to gauge his true intentions. I think I need to focus on my family. On Sarah and Lily," he finally admitted, his voice quiet, filled with a palpable sense of guilt. "What we have, it's been fun, Jess. You're amazing. But it's not sustainable. It's not right." A wave of triumph washed over Sarah's Jessica. Her plan was working. Mark was pulling away from Jessica, realizing his mistake. But a part of her, the part that was now living in Jessica's body, understood the pain this confession would inflict. "So, you're breaking up with me?" she asked, putting on a brave, slightly hurt facade. Mark nodded slowly. I think we need to. For everyone's sake." He looked genuinely remorseful. "I'm so sorry, Jess." Sarah's Jessica forced a tear to her eye, letting it trace a path down Jessica's cheek. "I understand," she whispered, her voice cracking. I really thought we had something special, Mark." Mark reached for her hand, his touch hesitant. "We did, Jess. But some things just aren't meant to be." As he left Jessica's apartment, Sarah's Jessica leaned against the closed door, a profound exhaustion washing over her. She had achieved her goal. Mark was retreating from the affair. But the victory felt hollow. She had seen his genuine pain, his struggle with his conscience. And she had felt the simulated sting of rejection through Jessica's body. The drama was getting too real, too personal. Meanwhile, back at the suburban home, Jessica's Sarah was struggling immensely. The demands of being a wife and mother were overwhelming. She found herself constantly on edge, terrified of making a mistake, of being discovered. Lily's innocent questions often left her flustered. "Mommy, why are you wearing that shirt again? You have so many pretty ones," Lily would ask, pointing at Sarah's comfortable but uninspired t-shirt. Jessica's Sarah, who was used to a rotating wardrobe of designer clothes, had been recycling the same few safe outfits from Sarah's closet. "It's my favorite, sweetie," she'd stammer, trying to deflect. Mark's emotional distance was a strange comfort and a constant source of frustration. On one hand, it gave her more leeway to be different without him noticing. On the other, she was constantly reminded of his betrayal, now from Sarah's perspective. She found herself watching him, analyzing his every move, every phone call, trying to decipher his secrets. The book club had been a disaster, and she had since started avoiding Sarah's friends, inventing flimsy excuses about needing to rest. The social isolation was profound, a stark contrast to Jessica's bustling social calendar. One afternoon, while picking up Lily from school, Jessica's Sarah overheard a group of mothers gossiping. "Did you hear about Sarah Hayes?" Apparently, she's been a little off since the accident. And Mark, well, he's always been a bit of a workaholic, hasn't he? Jessica's Sarah felt a flush of shame and defensiveness. This was Sarah's life, Sarah's reputation. She couldn't let them speculate. She walked past them, her head held high, pulling Lily close. The need to protect Sarah's image, to maintain the facade of their perfect family, was becoming an ingrained instinct. The biggest challenge was Lily. The child's unconditional love and trust were both a blessing and a burden. Jessica's Sarah found herself genuinely growing fond of Lily, experiencing the joys of motherhood she had never known. She learned to make Lily's favorite mac and cheese after several disastrous attempts and a frantic Google search, helped her with her unicorn drawings, and even started reading her bedtime stories, finding herself surprisingly moved by the simple narratives. One night, as she tucked Lily into bed, the little girl looked up at her, her eyes shining. "Mommy, I love you. You're the best mommy in the whole wide world." Jessica's Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She had never experienced such pure, unadulterated love. It was a profound, humbling moment. The guilt, which had been a constant companion, intensified. She was deceiving this innocent child, living a lie in her mother's skin. The next morning, Mark approached Sarah with an air of solemnity. "Sarah," he began, his voice hesitant, "I need to talk to you. About us." Sarah's heart pounded. This was it. He was going to confess. Or perhaps, worse, suggest a separation. She braced herself. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the accident," Mark continued, his eyes meeting Sarah's. "And I realized, I haven't been the husband you deserve. I've been distant, preoccupied. I've taken you and Lily for granted. And I'm so sorry." He looked genuinely remorseful, his eyes filled with a pain that Jessica's Sarah recognized as real. He wasn't confessing the affair directly, but he was confessing his failure as a husband. "I want to make things right, Sarah," Mark continued, reaching for her hand. "I want to put us first. To be the husband and father you deserve." Jessica's Sarah, still reeling from her own breakup with Mark in Jessica's body, felt a strange, almost overwhelming wave of emotion. This was what Sarah wanted. This was the dream she had fought to protect. But it was being offered to her, Jessica, in Sarah's body. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling slightly, I appreciate that. I really do." She pulled her hand away gently, a flicker of fear in her eyes. How could she accept this genuine offer of reconciliation when she was an imposter? "I want to start over," Mark insisted, his voice earnest. "A clean slate. No more late nights, no more distractions. Just us. Our family." Jessica's Sarah felt a profound sense of responsibility. She was living Sarah's life, and now Mark was offering a genuine chance at repair. She had to protect this. She had to ensure that Sarah's marriage, the one she had inadvertently helped to almost destroy, had a chance to heal. "Okay, Mark," Jessica's Sarah said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching Sarah's lips. "Let's try." As Mark embraced her, Jessica's Sarah felt a complex tapestry of emotions: relief that Sarah's marriage might be salvaged, guilt over her own past actions, and a strange, dawning sense of warmth from being in this family unit. The cracks in the facade were beginning to show, not just in their elaborate deception, but in the hearts of the women themselves. The lines between their identities were blurring, and the true drama, the emotional reckoning, was just beginning. The newfound reconciliation between Mark and Jessica's Sarah created a whole new layer of complexity. Mark, true to his word, became more attentive, showering Sarah with small gestures of affection and spending more time at home. Jessica's Sarah found herself in an increasingly uncomfortable position, forced to accept these overtures of love and commitment from a man she had recently been intimately involved with, all while pretending to be his wife. The guilt was a constant companion. Every shared meal, every family outing with Lily, every time Mark reached for her hand, Jessica's Sarah felt the weight of her deception pressing down on her. She saw the genuine efforts Mark was making, and a part of her, the part that was now living Sarah's life, felt a strange gratitude. But another part, the real Jessica, was acutely aware of the irony. She was receiving the affection Sarah had yearned for, under false pretenses. One evening, Mark suggested a romantic dinner out, just the two of us, to celebrate their renewed commitment. Jessica's Sarah panicked. A romantic dinner meant sustained conversation, intimacy, and the risk of exposure. She tried to demur, citing lingering fatigue from the accident. "Come on, honey," Mark pressed gently, "we need this. A chance to reconnect." Jessica's Sarah saw the genuine hope in his eyes, and she couldn't bring herself to refuse. She spent hours fretting over Sarah's wardrobe, trying to find something that felt both appropriate for Sarah and comfortable for Jessica. At the restaurant, she was stiff, uncomfortable, constantly worried about slipping up. Mark, however, seemed oblivious, genuinely happy to be spending time with his wife. He talked about their future, about taking Lily on a trip, about growing old together. Jessica's Sarah felt a profound sadness. This was a beautiful vision of a life she had almost destroyed. Meanwhile, Sarah's Jessica was living a different kind of complicated reality. Mark had, indeed, broken off their affair. His texts to Jessica were now purely professional, curt, and to the point. Sarah's Jessica felt a fierce satisfaction, knowing her family was safe for now. But the daily grind of being Jessica Thorne, while exhilarating professionally, was emotionally draining. She missed her own life, her own daughter, her own routine. The discovery of Jessica's folder and the hidden note had profoundly changed Sarah's perception of her rival. She realized that Jessica was not just a villain, but a woman with her own wounds, her own history of abandonment. This didn't excuse her actions, but it made her more human, more complex. One afternoon, Sarah's Jessica found herself alone in Jessica's apartment, feeling a deep wave of melancholy. She missed Lily's laughter, the familiar comfort of her own home. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, Jessica's beautiful face staring back, and felt an intense longing for her own identity. Suddenly, an idea sparked. She had to talk to Jessica. Really talk. They couldn't go on like this indefinitely. They needed to find a way back, and they needed to do it together. She pulled out Jessica's phone, her fingers hovering over Sarah's number. She had told Jessica to avoid contact for fear of exposure, but that rule felt irrelevant now. This was an emergency of the soul. Back in her own home, Jessica's Sarah's phone buzzed with an incoming text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at the abandoned coffee shop on Elm St at 9 p.m. Alone. Jay." Jessica's Sarah's heart leaped. Jay, it had to be Jessica. Or rather Sarah, in Jessica's body. She felt a surge of both fear and relief. Finally. That night, under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, they met. Sarah's Jessica, in her sleek, urban attire, and Jessica's Sarah, looking slightly disheveled in Sarah's comfortable sweater. The sight of each other, in their swapped bodies, was still jarring, a constant reminder of their impossible situation. "Mark broke up with me," Sarah's Jessica stated without preamble, her voice low and even. "He wants to work things out with his family. With you." Jessica's Sarah felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Relief, that Mark was finally choosing his family. Guilt, that she was receiving the benefit of that choice. He told me he wants to start over," she confirmed, her voice a whisper. "He's trying. He's really trying." "Good," Sarah's Jessica said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "That's phase 1. My family is secure for now. But this can't go on, Jessica. We need to find a way to switch back. I can't live your life forever, and you can't live mine." Jessica's Sarah nodded, a profound weariness in Sarah's eyes. "I know. It's harder than I thought. Being you. Being a mother. It's a lot." She paused, then looked at Sarah's Jessica, a raw honesty in Sarah's voice. "I never realized how much you sacrificed. How much you carried. Lily, she's incredible, Sarah. She loves you so much." Sarah's Jessica felt a prickle of tears in Jessica's eyes. Hearing her own daughter's love expressed through the woman who had hurt her was a strange and powerful experience. "She's my world," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "And Mark." Jessica's Sarah continued, a sigh escaping Sarah's lips. He's complicated. He's not just the man I thought he was. He's hurting too. And he genuinely wants to make things right for you. They stood in silence for a moment, two women who had been adversaries, now united by a bizarre twist of fate and a shared predicament. The animosity, the resentment, had been replaced by a reluctant understanding. I found a note, Sarah's Jessica finally said, breaking the silence. In your desk. About your father. And your mother. Jessica's Sarah flinched, her gaze dropping. That's personal. I know, Sarah's Jessica replied gently. But it helps me understand. Your desire for something real. For a man who wouldn't leave. Jessica's Sarah looked up, her eyes, Sarah's eyes, filled with a raw vulnerability. He always chose work. He always left. I didn't want to be like my mother, waiting around for a man who didn't truly see her. She paused, a bitter laugh escaping Sarah's lips. Look at me now. I almost stole someone else's husband, and now I'm stuck being her, watching him try to fix things, knowing I'm not really her. So, what do we do? Sarah's Jessica asked, a sense of urgency in her voice. We've both been living these lives, experiencing them. We've seen each other's worlds. We need to figure out what caused this, and how to reverse it. They spent the next few hours huddled in the dimly lit coffee shop, brainstorming. They revisited the accident, the precise moment of impact, the feeling of the swap. They talked about strange occurrences, anything out of the ordinary they might have experienced just before or during the collision. I remember, a flash of light, Jessica's Sarah offered, her brow furrowed in concentration, and a really strong buzzing sound right before the impact. Yes, Sarah's Jessica exclaimed. Me too. A weird static electricity feeling almost. Like being zapped. They searched online, discreetly, for any mention of similar body-swapping phenomena, for scientific anomalies, for anything that might offer a clue. They found nothing but fantastical stories and urban legends. This is insane, Jessica's Sarah whispered, running a hand through Sarah's hair. We can't just live like this forever. No, Sarah's Jessica agreed, a grim determination setting in. We won't. We need to work together, Jessica. We are the only ones who know the truth, the only ones who can fix this. We are an unlikely alliance. From that night forward, their secret meetings became a regular occurrence. They shared information, compared notes on their respective lives, and collaborated on theories about their predicament. Sarah's Jessica coached Jessica's Sarah on subtle nuances of Sarah's life, her preferences, her friends. Jessica's Sarah, in turn, offered insights into Jessica's professional world, her contacts, her schedule, helping Sarah's Jessica navigate the complexities of her assumed identity. A strange, fragile bond began to form between them, born of shared trauma and an urgent need for cooperation. They were no longer just rivals. They were partners in an impossible mission. The comedic elements of their situation were still present, particularly in the daily mishaps and near discoveries, but beneath it all, a powerful, dramatic narrative of two women, forced to walk in each other's shoes, was unfolding. They were not just trying to switch back, they were, in a profound and unexpected way, learning to understand each other, to see the world through the other's eyes. And in doing so, they were both slowly, painstakingly, beginning to change. The unlikely alliance between Sarah's Jessica and Jessica's Sarah grew stronger with each clandestine meeting. Their initial antagonism had faded, replaced by a grudging respect and a shared sense of urgency. They were each other's only confidants, the only ones who truly understood the absurdity and emotional toll of their swapped lives. Sarah's Jessica continued to excel at Thorne and Associates, finding an unexpected fulfillment in Jessica's creative career. She discovered that Jessica was not just talented, but fiercely independent, a trait Sarah admired. She even started to integrate some of Jessica's boldness into her own personality, finding a newfound confidence in her assumed skin. But the longing for her own life, for Lily, was a constant ache. Mark's continued efforts at reconciliation with Sarah filled her with a bittersweet hope. He was trying. He was genuinely trying to fix their marriage. This made her mission to switch back even more critical. Jessica's Sarah, on the other hand, was slowly but surely mastering the art of being Sarah. She learned to cook Lily's favorite meals, navigated school drop-offs and pickups with a practiced ease, and even began to engage more authentically with Sarah's friends, offering insights on the book club novels. Thanks to late-night speed reading and Sarah as Jessica's whispered coaching, the initial panic had subsided, replaced by a strange sense of belonging. She found a quiet satisfaction in the rhythm of family life, in the simple joys of motherhood, a life she had never imagined for herself. The greatest shift, however, was in her perception of Mark. Living as his wife, experiencing his renewed affection, his efforts to repair their marriage, she saw a side of him she hadn't known as his mistress. He was genuinely remorseful, genuinely committed to his family. This made her guilt even more profound. She found herself actively helping him, subtly guiding him to be a better husband, even though she was not his real wife. The irony was almost comical, yet deeply poignant. Their joint investigation into the body swap continued. They re-examined every detail of the accident, searching for any overlooked clues. They even revisited the site of the collision, hoping for an environmental trigger, a strange energy field, anything. But the intersection was just an ordinary street corner, now devoid of the chaos that had defined their lives. It was that buzzing, that flash of light, Sarah as Jessica insisted during one of their meetings, held in a secluded park. It felt like an electrical surge, a static shock. Jessica as Sarah nodded. I felt it too. Like a jolt. What if it was something in the truck? Or even something we were wearing? They explored theories about electromagnetic fields, cosmic rays, even obscure scientific experiments. Their search led them down countless rabbit holes, each one ending in frustration. Then, Jessica as Sarah remembered something. Before the accident, when I was waiting at the crosswalk, I was fiddling with a new prototype smart ring. It was a gift from a tech client. It's supposed to monitor biorhythms and even generate a small, personalized electromagnetic field for wellness benefits. Sarah as Jessica's eyes widened. A smart ring? And you were wearing it? Yes, Jessica as Sarah confirmed, patting Sarah's, her own, hand. I had it on the index finger of my right hand. It was vibrating slightly just before everything happened. Sarah as Jessica suddenly remembered a detail from her own experience. And I was wearing my old copper bracelet. Lily made it for me. It was on my left wrist, and I remember feeling a strange tingle from it just as I lunged forward. They stared at each other, a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. Copper. Electromagnetic fields. A collision of unusual circumstances. What if, Sarah as Jessica whispered, the combination of the smart ring's field, your copper bracelet, and the kinetic energy of the impact created a perfect storm? A temporary quantum entanglement of our consciousnesses. She was reaching for scientific explanations she barely understood, but it felt like the closest they had come to a theory. So, if we could recreate those conditions? Jessica as Sarah mused, her mind racing. It's risky, Sarah as Jessica warned. We have no idea what could happen. We could make it permanent. Or worse. Despite the danger, the idea was too compelling to ignore. They were desperate. They meticulously planned their experiment. They needed a controlled environment, a way to simulate the collision, and a method to recreate the specific electromagnetic conditions. They decided to attempt it at Jessica's, now Sarah's, apartment, reasoning that it offered more privacy and control than Sarah's, now Jessica's, home, where Mark and Lily were a constant factor. Sarah as Jessica would wear Jessica's smart ring, and Jessica as Sarah would wear Sarah's copper bracelet. They would stand facing each other, and at a precise moment, replicate the lunge and the close proximity, hoping the biorhythms and fields would align. The night of the experiment was fraught with tension. Sarah as Jessica felt a mix of exhilaration and pure terror. This was their chance. Their only chance. Jessica as Sarah, in Sarah's body, looked pale but determined. Are you sure about this? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. No, Sarah as Jessica admitted, but we can't live like this forever. We have to try. They stood opposite each other in Jessica's living room, which now felt more like a makeshift laboratory. Sarah as Jessica had charged the smart ring. Jessica as Sarah had affixed the copper bracelet to her wrist. On the count of 3, Sarah as Jessica instructed, her voice barely a whisper. 1, 2, 3. They lunged forward simultaneously, mirroring the moment of the accident, their hands reaching out to each other. As their bodies made contact, a strange energy crackled between them. A blinding flash of light filled the room, accompanied by the familiar, intense buzzing sound. Then silence. They stood there, breathless, eyes wide, staring at each other. Nothing. They were still in the wrong bodies. A wave of crushing disappointment washed over them. It didn't work, Jessica as Sarah whispered, her voice choked with despair. Sarah as Jessica felt a profound sense of defeat. They had been so close, so hopeful. Maybe it's not the exact conditions, she murmured, her shoulders slumping. Maybe we missed something. Just as they were about to give up, Sarah as Jessica, in Jessica's body, felt a strange tremor, a disorienting ripple through her consciousness. The room seemed to waver, and for a fleeting second, she saw her own reflection in the mirror, her familiar face looking back at her. "Wait," she exclaimed, her voice filled with a renewed urgency. "I felt something." A flicker. Jessica as Sarah, in Sarah's body, also gasped. "Me too." For a second. "I saw myself." They tried again, with renewed hope, focusing their intention, imagining their souls returning to their rightful places. Again, the lunge, the touch, the flash of light, the buzzing. This time, the sensation was stronger. A powerful jolt, a feeling of being pulled in 2 directions at once, a profound disorienting shift. And then, blackness. When Sarah opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the familiar pattern of her own living room ceiling. She looked down at her hands. They were her hands. Her wedding ring gleamed on her finger. She was in her own body. She scrambled to her feet, her legs feeling shaky. "Jessica," she cried out. Jessica was lying on the floor, groaning, but now it was Jessica Thorne looking up at her, in her own sleek, designer clothes, with her own dark hair and piercing blue eyes. "Sarah?" Jessica whispered, her voice filled with disbelief and a dawning, overwhelming relief. She looked down at herself, at her own body, and let out a shaky laugh. "We did it. We actually did it." Sarah felt a surge of exhilaration, a joy so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She was back. In her own skin. In her own life. But as she looked at Jessica, a strange mixture of emotions washed over her. The woman who had been her rival, her enemy, had also become her unlikely ally, her temporary stand-in, her forced mirror. They had walked in each other's shoes, experienced each other's lives, and in doing so, had irrevocably changed. "We need to talk," Sarah said, her voice clear, her own voice, filled with a new understanding. "Really talk?" Jessica nodded, her eyes meeting Sarah's. "I think we do." The body swap was over. But the consequences, the revelations, and the dramatic shifts in their lives and perceptions were just beginning to unfold. The stage was set for the final, profound act of their story. The immediate aftermath of the switch was a whirlwind of relief, disorientation, and an overwhelming need for sleep. Both Sarah and Jessica spent the first few hours in their own bodies simply existing, reveling in the familiarity of their own skin, their own thoughts. Sarah hugged Lily so tightly the next morning, tears streaming down her face, claiming it was just the lingering effects of the accident. Lily, blissfully unaware, just snuggled into her mother's embrace. But the temporary return to normalcy couldn't last. The body swap had fundamentally altered both women, and the secrets they now shared demanded a reckoning. They met again, discreetly, at the same abandoned coffee shop, a neutral territory for their post-swap discussions. "So," Sarah began, her voice steady, her eyes meeting Jessica's, "Mark broke up with you." Jessica nodded, a wry, almost bittersweet smile on her face. "Yes. He said he wanted to focus on his family. On you and Lily." She paused, then looked at Sarah with a raw honesty. "He really does love you, Sarah. And Lily. He's genuinely trying to be a better husband, a better father. Sarah felt a complex swirl of emotions. Relief, gratitude, and a strange compassion for Jessica. "I know," she said, her voice softer. "I saw it. I saw his guilt, his struggle. Being in your body, experiencing his emotional withdrawal firsthand, and then his attempts to reconnect with me, it gave me a very clear picture." "And you, in my life," Jessica countered. Did you enjoy it?" Sarah hesitated. "Professionally, yes. You're brilliant, Jessica. Your work is incredible. But personally, it was lonely. And the thought of being away from Lily, it was excruciating." She looked at Jessica, a question in her eyes. "Why Mark, Jessica? Why my husband?" Jessica sighed, her gaze dropping. "The note you found, it's true. My father left when I was young, always prioritizing his career. My mother became very cynical, very guarded. I swore I wouldn't be like her. I wanted a man who would choose me, who would stay. Mark, he was charming, attentive, and he made me feel seen. I thought he was different. I thought I could make him choose me." She looked up, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't realize the depth of the damage I was causing. To your family. To Lily. To you." A heavy silence hung between them. The raw honesty was both painful and liberating. "And I," Sarah confessed, "I judged you so harshly. I saw you as a one-dimensional villain, stealing my husband. I didn't see your pain, your history." She paused, a new understanding dawning on her. "But I also saw that you're a good person, Jessica. You genuinely cared for Lily, even in my body. You tried to be a good mother." Jessica's eyes softened. "Lily is amazing, Sarah. She's so full of light. You're lucky." "And you," Sarah said, a faint smile touching her lips, "you make a mean box of mac and cheese now." Jessica actually laughed, a genuine, unburdened sound. "I hated every minute of learning it. But Lily's face, it was worth it." The shared laughter was a balm, a sign that perhaps, from the ashes of their conflict, something unexpected could emerge. "So, what now?" Jessica asked, the humor fading, her voice serious. "What do we tell Mark? What do we tell anyone?" Sarah considered this. "We tell no one about the switch. It's our secret. Forever. As for Mark, you need to truly step away. No more professional contact, no more casual run-ins. He needs a clean break to truly focus on our family. And I need to confront him, properly, about his affair. Not from Jessica's perspective, but as his wife. He deserves to know that I know. And I deserve to demand accountability." Jessica nodded, her expression resolute. "I understand. And I will. I'll make sure there's no lingering doubt, no temptation. I owe you that." Over the next few days, Sarah meticulously planned her conversation with Mark. She gathered her thoughts, her emotions, her resolve. She didn't want to accuse, she wanted to communicate. She wanted to heal. One evening, after Lily was asleep, Sarah sat Mark down in the living room, the same room where she had first discovered the private investigator's report. Her heart pounded, but her resolve was firm. "Mark," she began, her voice calm but unwavering, "we need to talk. About us. And about Jessica Thorne." Mark's face paled. He visibly flinched, his eyes darting away. "Sarah, I was going to tell you." "I know," Sarah said, her eyes fixed on his. "I know about the affair, Mark. I've known for a while." She told him about hiring the private investigator, about the photographs, about the email. She didn't mention the body swap, of course, but she laid bare the extent of his betrayal, the pain it had caused her. Mark listened, his head bowed, his face etched with shame and regret. When she finished, he looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, I am so sorry. I messed up. Terribly. I lost myself, I took you for granted. It was a stupid, selfish mistake, and I regret it more than anything." He confessed his own struggles, the pressures at work, the feeling of losing himself in the monotony of routine. He didn't offer excuses, but explanations, laying bare his own vulnerabilities. He told her about his decision to end things with Jessica, about his desire to truly commit to their family. "I want to earn your trust back, Sarah," he pleaded, his voice thick with emotion. I know it won't be easy, and I don't deserve it, but I promise I will spend every day trying." Sarah looked at him, truly seeing him. The man she had loved, who had hurt her, but who was also now genuinely broken, genuinely remorseful. The experience of living as Jessica had given her a unique perspective, allowing her to see the nuances of his actions and the profound guilt he was now carrying. "It will take time, Mark," Sarah said, her voice softening. "A lot of time. And a lot of work. But I'm willing to try. For Lily. For us. If you are truly committed to making things right." Mark nodded, his eyes shining with hope. "I am. I promise, Sarah. I am." The journey to rebuild their marriage was slow and arduous. They started couples counseling, Mark actively participating, genuinely trying to understand his actions and Sarah's pain. He made good on his promises, spending more time with Lily, planning date nights with Sarah, and actively working to rebuild the trust he had shattered. The house, once filled with unspoken tension, slowly began to regain its warmth. As for Jessica, she kept her promise. She found a new job at a prestigious design firm in a different city, a fresh start away from the echoes of her past. She severed all ties with Mark, ensuring a clean break. But the experience of living as Sarah had profoundly changed her. She found herself volunteering at a local community center, working with children, discovering a nurturing side she never knew she possessed. The quiet strength she had observed in Sarah, the resilience of motherhood, had left an indelible mark. She was no longer just the ambitious career woman. She was a woman who understood the complexities of family, of love, and of the profound sacrifices involved. A few months later, Sarah received a postcard from Jessica. It was a beautiful design, naturally, of a vibrant cityscape. On the back, in elegant script, it read, "Sarah, starting fresh. It's different, but good. Thank you. For everything. For the painful lesson, and for showing me what true strength looks like. And tell Lily I said hi. And that I finally mastered the mac and cheese recipe. Warmly, Jessica." Sarah smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. The scars of betrayal would always remain, but the wound was healing. She had her family back, a Mark who was truly present, and a deeper understanding of herself and the complexities of human relationships. The body swap had been a bizarre, traumatic, and at times hilarious ordeal. It had forced two women to confront their lives, their choices, and their humanity in the most unexpected way possible. It was a drama of mistaken identities, an exploration of empathy, and ultimately, a story of redemption. Sarah, once the wronged wife, had become a stronger, more compassionate woman. And Jessica, once the homewrecker, had found her own path to a new, more meaningful life. Their lives, irrevocably intertwined by a freak accident, had found a way to a new, more authentic beginning.